This is the fourth Carson City roll in this series. By the end of this video, we'll know whether this experiment has earned the right to continue or whether it stops here. Now that decision doesn't come from excitement, luck, or how rare a mint mark looks on camera. It comes from what's actually inside this roll, and from what happens to the coins after this video ends. So we're going to do this the same way we always do. The enders get set aside, and then we work through the roll. And only then do we decide what this will actually mean. All right, let's start with the interior of the roll. Point number 2. All right, starting off with a 1902. Looks like a 1902-0. Few abrasions, typical New Orleans strike. All right, that's coin number 2. Coin number 3 is an 1887 Philly. And she's got typical abrasions. All right, not a terrible strike, not too bad on the reverse, not really a lot to be unhappy with. The strike on the obverse, not the best. And there are some hits and rubs on the obverse. But the reverse, all right, we got that one little hit out there. Otherwise, that doesn't look half bad. And there could very well be, yep, there are die cracks. Look at that, die breaks. Right there around the United, up there around the States. Very nice coin. All right, that was number 3. Coin number 4. 1886. That's a Philly. Got some nice luster to it. Liking the cartwheels. All right, we've got the typical noise and chatter in the fields. A little bit of a weak strike. Wow, the reverse looks pretty solid. I'm not seeing too many hits or abrasions there, really just very minor stuff. Looks like we do have a hit across the eagle breast, however. Let's take a closer look at that. All right, it's not devastating, but it is there. All right, that's number 4. Number 5, another 87, Philly. Decent looking strike. Well, a little weak. Okay. Few abrasions in the field. Not overly serious. Cheek has a couple of hits and scrapes. Got some kind of a smudge going on there on the reverse. Otherwise, typical noise, a little bit of chatter. Nothing really serious. All right, we'll keep going. That was number 5. Let me know in the comments what you think so far. Should I continue to buy these rolls, or does this experiment end right here? right, we've got another duplicate, 1887 Philly. Again, not a terrible strike, but not the best. A few hits and abrasions on the cheek in the fields. All right, looks like we've got just some very light toning starting on this one. That's kind of pretty. And not too many hits and abrasions. Look at the reverse of this coin. I mean, there's a couple of hits out in the fields, but for Morgan dollars, that's not too shabby. Yeah, looks like we have another die crack. Definitely. Look at that, all the way down to the bottom. Maybe a little bit up there, not so much. All right, that's coin number 6. Number 7. 1883. Yes, 1883. New Orleans. Not too bad, especially for New Orleans. That strike is decent right there. And this is typical of what we've seen out of the other rolls. The interior coins, generally nothing spectacular, although this one is pretty darn nice for an 83-0. But the real issue is, do the enders justify the interior of the interior of the roll? Do the interior coins show any value at all, or are they common dates in beat up condition? And so far the jury is still out, but this is not looking too bad right here. All right, that's not a bad looking specimen. All right, so that's an 83-0. That is coin number 7. Number 8, another 1883. That's probably going to be another O. It is. All right, 83-0. A little bit of a weak strike. Well, not terrible for New Orleans. A little bit of noise, few hits on the cheek, jaw. Nothing that looks terribly deep. All right, again, pretty nice looking reverse. Hard to be too unhappy with that. And once again, all right, there's a nice hit down there by the 3 in that first star. So again, we're seeing a few duplicates, decent quality coins in the interior. Nothing really stand out or spectacular. All right, this is number 9. All right, 87 Philly. And a little hit on the face, little noise behind the head. A couple more scrapes on the cheek. And again, not a bad reverse. So the pattern that I'm seeing over all 4 of these rolls are that the interior coins are not standout by any stretch. They are, brilliant uncirculated coins. I don't know that any of them would be a star if they were sent off to grading. They might do okay, but given the abrasions and some of the major hits on the surfaces in some cases, yeah, there's a limit to how high they're going to go. All right, so there you've got another hit on the breast. And we've seen a couple of duplicate date mint mark combinations in this roll. And again, that's pretty typical for what I have seen in these rolls. All right, we're halfway through. This is number 10. And looks like we're going to get another duplicate. Yep, 87p. And a little bit of toning on that one. It's kind of nice. And I'm not seeing too many abrasions. A little bit of a weak strike. But then we've got some very nice toning going on the reverse. Look at that. And I'm not seeing a lot of abrasions. Let's get a better look. All right. So, yeah, that's basically pretty well toned, but also maintaining the luster. Look at that. That is really pretty. So, again, the interior coins throughout these rolls have pretty much been decent. You know, nothing spectacular so far, but I think what happens with the Carson City Enders after all four of these rolls are opened and they're sent off for grading will tell the real story. Will they come back genuine? Will they come back details? Or hopefully, will they come back straight grade? All right, this one's got some nice color at the top. Not the best strike. A few abrasions and a nice little hit by her lip and the chin there. Reverse. Well, again, I'd say that's a solid coin. Some nice color down at the bottom. And pretty much slight toning across the surface. So again, we're not getting a lot of variety in date mint mark combinations, which is a little unfortunate. And all right, here's an 1897, so maybe it's going to get a little bit better for me here. But that's been typical. One of the rolls did have a very nice variety of dates and mint marks, and the others have had, one of them with almost all the same date. The others have had several duplicates, but not to the point where it was obsessive. And this one may have a die break at the bottom and is otherwise not a bad looking strike. There is a die break down there by the U and the star. And up there by the America. Nice looking coin. All right. Okay. We are on lucky number 13. All right, another 1897. Another Philly. All right, we've got some noise in the fields. A little bit of a weak strike. Reverse is a little better, but we've got a hit on the breast, which is unfortunate because there isn't really a lot of noise on the reverse otherwise. Oh, and we've got another nice little die break going on up there. Yeah, look at that, right into the wing and then across the states and then across the America. Wow, that's impressive. That was a die that was ready to give out pretty much any time. That was cracked almost all the way around. All right, so that's lucky number 13. Number 14, 1897, a little bit of toning at the top. All right. Getting a little tired of 1897s, but this one looks to be a little bit better, actually. Whoop, no, there's a little hit on the chin there. That is unfortunate. And on the neck. Fields look pretty nice, though. Decent strike. And that looks very nice. Wow, we've got another die break. Look at this. Not quite as significant as the last one. Well, maybe it kind of is. Yeah, look at that. Even from the wreath to the wing through states. But then, well, yeah, it continues not as big into America, but there is a little bit up there. And that's what we're looking at down on the neck and on the chin. Okay. That was what? That was 14. Number 15. All right, a different date at least, 1898. We'll take that. 1898 Philly. Wow, that is really nice. All right, it's hard to complain about that. A little bit of a soft strike, but I'm not really seeing a lot of noise. A little bit on the cheek and jaw, a little rubbing behind the head, a little bit of scuffing outside before the face. Overall, not a bad looking coin. Look at this. Okay. A little bit of chatter out there to the right of the wing and above the motto. Wow, we've got another die break? No. Okay. No. All right. That was just my eyes playing tricks on me. Well, no, I take it back. We do have a little die break right there. All right. Not nearly as pronounced as on the others. Yeah. But right there on the United, you've got a little bit going into the wing through the E and the D. Man, look at that reflectivity. That's crazy. All right, and then you got that little bit of noise out there to the right of the arrow tips. And you've got another die break down here I didn't see. Under the U, the star. Dollar has a little bit. Does it? Yeah, very little bit. Okay. Getting interesting. All right, number 16. 87. Yep, Philly. All right, another duplicate. That's not terrible. Well, yeah, it's not a great strike. A little bit flat, a little bit weak. And we've got some noise and chatter out here. Whatever that is down by the E. How bad is that? All right, that's just a little smudge of something. And that's a little bit more superficial. Same up there. A little bit of a hit down there from the rim of another coin. A couple of hits on the cheek. And a little noise in front of the face. And a little bit more out there behind the head. All right. Coin number 17. Ooh, 1889. Okay. Philly. All right, we do have a rim hit down at the bottom below the date. We've got some dings on the chin and the jaw, and some chatter out in the fields. Another hit back there behind her head by the M. Reversed. Not too bad. Not seeing a lot of hits or abrasions on the reverse. That's pretty nice, actually. Very minor superficial rub contact, it looks like. And otherwise looking pretty solid. But the obverse is where we've got some potential hits. So we've got some noise on the cheek and jaw and the chin right there. And we do have that little hit at the rim down at the bottom. Otherwise, not a terrible looking coin, but not a high grader. All right, number 18. 1896. Philly. All right, that is not a terrible strike at all. And I'm really not seeing a whole lot of noise and abrasions. There are a couple of hits to the face and the neck and out behind the head and in front of the face, but nothing really significant. Okay, reverse. Well, again, relatively solid and pretty clean. Let's go take a look over here. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of hits on the wing up there on the left, and a little bit of noise above the eagle's head and the motto, and a little bit more out there to the right of the wing. But I'm not really devastated with how that looks. And on the obverse, I mean, we've got some hits, but again, there's really nothing terribly deep or devastating. That one on the neck is probably about the worst. Okay. All right, we're getting down to it. Coin number 19 is in 1885, New Orleans. And that, again, wow, for New Orleans, that is a very nice strike. And, some noise and abrasions, a little bit of chatter out in the fields. Overall, not a terrible coin on the obverse. All right, reverse is looking like this. Again, a very nice strike for New Orleans. Wow. And really just some minor chatter in the fields. Let's take a closer look at that because most of those, again, are superficial rub marks. There's a couple of tiny scratches and nicks, but nothing really heavy duty. You do have a couple of dings on the cheek and the jawline. But man, that is a really nice strike for New Orleans. And, all right, you do have a hit right there above the motto, and a couple on the wing on the left. But man, for New Orleans, that is really nice. All right, so here is the deal. As has been typical with the other three Carson City rolls, the interior has been solid in every case. I mean, is it a fluke? No. They are uncirculated coins. In some cases, they're fairly beat up. In other cases, they look fairly good. What it seems to me is that these rolls are constructed with decent coins in the middle, with the dangled hope of getting that massive Carson City hit on either end. Right, this is number one, this is number 20. And just looking at it from the table cam, magnificent luster, and I'm really not seeing a lot of noise or chatter in the fields. I'm not really seeing any dings or hits. What's likely to happen? This is going to be either a very common Carson City, like an 83 or 84, which I've already pulled a few of, or it'll be a better date, but it'll be beat up on the front. All right, so it is yet again another 84. The reverse of this one looks beautiful, and as I expected, the obverse of this one has quite a bit of chatter and noise. So let's take a little closer look at this one and see what we're dealing with. So it is a reasonably good strike. It does have noise and chatter in the fields, and on the cheek, again, though, we've got beautiful reflectivity. We might almost have to check this one for a PL surface. And then the reverse. Oh my goodness, look at this. I mean, that is beautiful. Now, if the obverse of this coin looked as good as the reverse, we'd be in good shape. But that is also why I refuse to sell these Carson City coins raw. I want to know that they are legit, they have a straight grade, and I need to know what the grading companies are going to assign that grade to be. Now, if they come back genuine or details, all right, well, I will take that hit. I do not expect my buyers to take that risk. When you buy a coin like this from me, especially for big money, I want to be comfortable that this is a legit coin. Now look at the die cracks on this one too. In fact, let's get this one under the scope, because that is a pretty nice, come on, focus. Oh, where was it? It was over here. There we go. Look at this. So once again, we've got a pretty nice looking die break around the motto. All right, then it ended. But again, look at that reflectivity. That is crazy. But unfortunately, on the obverse, it does not look as pristine. So while it is a reasonably nice uncirculated specimen for a Carson City silver dollar, it is unlikely to grade high level. But look at that. Now that's got to be a foot away right there, and you're still seeing the crisp, clear outline of those LEDs from that microscope. Like that is a reflective surface right there. All right, so that is coin number one, an 1884 Carson City. Coin number 20, much like coin number one on the reverse, has beautiful cartwheel luster and pretty much free of any real abrasions or problems. Looking at the surface, just a quick overview of the reverse. I mean, again, you're looking at remarkable reflectivity, a beautiful strike, a little bit of a cameo effect, and just a very small hit above the eagle head. And that's about it. I'm really not seeing any other real major hits of any kind. So, as with the last one, we've got a beautiful reverse, which gives one reason to be hopeful and optimistic that the other side of this coin looks this good and might even be a more scarce day. But no, it's another 1884. Okay. And this one doesn't look terrible. Let's see what we're looking at here. All right, well, we do have a little ding on the jaw there, which is a little deeper than I would like, and a little bit of noise in front of the face, and a little more down on the neck. But otherwise, pretty good strike, and real nice reflectivity. I mean, we've already seen this, so let's take it over here. And it looks like she took a nice rim hit right there on the jaw. And otherwise, it's just really minor chatter. And again, really nice reflectivity. A pretty good strike overall. And the reverse, just looking gorgeous. I mean, you've just got a little bit of noise above the eagle head, and that's really about it. Up right there between the arrow tip and the wing, and a little bit over there on the left. And otherwise, you're looking at a pretty darn nice Carson City silver dollar. All right, we've now seen the roll. So here's the verdict, and it's not really a flashy one. After 4 different rolls, there's really nothing to suggest that these rolls are fabricated, resealed, or deliberately deceptive. They behave the way legitimate vintage Morgan rolls should behave. But that alone is not enough to recommend pursuing them. Carson City Morgans are among the most commonly counterfeited coins in U.S. numismatics. Now, I could definitely sell these raw. That would be faster. It might make me a little bit more money, but it would also shift the risk to the buyer. And that's not how I operate. If there's risk involved, I take it, not the person buying the coin. That's why all 9 Carson City coins from this series are going to be sent for grading. And until those results are back, there really is no responsible recommendation, and there shouldn't be one. When the slabs return, we'll finish the story. Until then, this experiment stops here. So if you want to follow this series all the way through to its completion, I will be linking the return videos here as soon as they're ready.